The following program was produced by an independent community producer. The opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of the ECAT staff or board of directors.
Hi, I'm your host, Karen Miranda. Welcome to Whispers from the Other Side. We are coming to you live from Eastern Massachusetts. The lines are now open, so feel free to call the station up. And in the meantime, I will be talking about my experiences I've had as a medium. And one thing I do want to say that everybody's been asking me about too is your loved ones are not alone on the other side. They're safe and sound with family and friends, although it depends on what we want to do when we cross over to the other side. I just thought I'd let you know that they're not alone, just so you know that, especially the people that die when they're young. I just wanted to share that with you. The thing I want to talk about tonight is spirit visitations. And one of the things I do want to tell you, those are very real. And one night when I was at home, when I lived in Quincy, I was in bed, and it was like 3 o'clock in the morning, which is actually one of the very most popular times for spirit visitations to visit you. They don't always show themselves when you want them to, because you might not be ready to see them yet, so that's why they will do that. But I was sound asleep, and I said to my, I just, woke up out of the blue, and all of a sudden I saw this little girl with she didn't look like she was from this century. I'm like looking at her going, you're not from this time frame. And she had a little beanie cap on and a white nightgown, and she was like she was sleeping. And she was very peaceful. And of course, me being me, I'm there rubbing my eyes going, oh, it's just my imagination. But she didn't go away. So I said, all right, and then I'll, do some investigating. I knew just the person that I could ask about her. When my daughter came home from school, I said to my daughter, I want to ask you something. I saw the spirit in my bedroom. She just manifested herself to me at 3 in the morning, and she had a little cap on and a white nightgown. And she filled me in, my daughter Melissa. She said, Ma, don't you know that back in the day, that spirits actually, they dressed the children in a cap and gown and their nighties just to make it look like they were sleeping? And I said, I didn't know that. I was like totally thankful for her. And then all of a sudden I went to look and say something to her to say thank you to her for sharing that with me. She was gone. Because we lived at the time, the cemetery was across the street. And so she was gone a good while, and I'm like sitting there saying, all right, where's Melissa? And so 2 hours later, she came home, and she said, Ma, I got something to tell you. And I said, what's that, Melissa? She said to me, she goes, I was up in the graveyard. I know, a long time I said to her, I was beginning to get worried about her. She said, all the graves, except for one. There was one little girl that was buried up there, and she was from the 1800s. So I said, oh, you got to come show me, because me being me, inquiring minds want to know. I just said to her, all right, so I got my jacket, and we went up to the graveyard. And I said to her, wow, that's really cool. So I had to learn not to, second guess my gifts. So I said, I thanked Melissa for doing that for me. And the next day I was curious, I wanted to do a little bit more investigating. So I called one of my friends, Mike, at the time, and I said to Mike, I got something to ask you. He said, I told him what happened, and he said to me, the thing I want to know is why isn't she buried. You know how in the graveyards they have everybody buried in rows? Her grave was not in place. Her grave was like different from everybody else's. It was near everybody. She wasn't buried, but it was just like placed differently. So I said, okay. And when I waited for Melissa to come home from school, and I said, want to go back up to the graveyard? She goes, I said, I want to check something out. And she said, yeah. And so we went up, and she said, oh, son of a gun. Mike was right. And she said, about what, Ma? I said, she was not buried in a row. She was, her grave was out of whack. And I said to her, that was really good to know. And she said to me, all right, Ma, and I said some prayers, because I always pray for spirits, because prayers are important. However you, choose to pray for people, our deceased loved ones. And I said some prayers, and the children, I always make sure that they are not alone. They're with somebody on the other side, like a family or friend. And a couple of nights went by, and, it was around 5 in the morning. I never know who's going to show up in my bedroom. And I said, I woke up, and I saw all these boys. They were teenagers. Like, they were up to, no good. I don't mean to be disrespectful to anybody, but, they looked like they were up to no good. And I'm like, sitting there going, all right, so you guys are not from this century. You're from from the century, but I was feeling like more like the 60s and that time frame. And I just looked at them, and I thanked them for letting me know that they were there. And, that was wonderful. And that's when I said I looked and I said, all right, so these were called visits. And, it's really weird, because sometimes people misinterpret ghosts from spirits that are visiting. Ghosts usually do hauntings in your house, whereas spirits just come to deliver messages to their deceased loved ones that are still here, to let them know, whatever it is you're looking for in a reading. And then, I said, just let you know that, too. And a haunting is, things that go bump in the night, like you see on TV, with the furniture moving and stuff like that. I don't see those things that way, but they're real, too, and just to pay attention. And then it was another time when I wanted to share with you is our wakes and funerals. People do say, do we see our wakes and funerals when we cross over? And I said, I think so. So I had to ask the Reverend at the time, do we see our wakes and funerals when we pass away? And she said, yes, we do. We're just in our spiritual bodies. So I said, okay. And I said to her, I shared an experience when I was at my ex-husband's family funeral. I was going up to the casket, nice and normal. So being a medium, which, for those of you out there who are mediums and who are gifted, know how you want to be a little bit normal sometimes. I went up to the casket to pay my respects, and then pay my respects to the family. And then all of a sudden I looked up above the casket, and I was like, oh my goodness, those are so real. And I was like sitting there saying, all of a sudden it was like a silhouette form when the spirit was forming, but, not physically, of course, but spiritually. So I said some more prayers for her, and I said to her, go to the white light, get caught up with your family and friends, because that's what I will do when I see spirits, like especially like children. I'll tell them to go make sure they're not alone, because like I said, so many people say to me, are they alone? And they want to rest assured that they're not alone. And we do see our own funerals and our own wakes. And when somebody gets ready to cross over, which I did want to share this with you too, is sometimes like, especially if you're sick in the hospital, pay attention, because sometimes the person that's, getting ready to cross over might say, I see somebody that's, with me in the room. And it could be somebody that passed away, because my late aunt actually did some investigating, because I always like to investigate and, find out what this is about. And I said to her, what about when we die? who had the gift. And also, you know, I asked her about my grandmother, and she said your grandmother was gifted psychically. And I said, oh, wow. So I said, that made sense to me, you know. And she said to me, you know, Karen, the strangest thing, just before she passed away, she said to me, there's Uncle Don, there's Aunt Tess, all these people that she kept talking about. I was like, oh, wow, that's really interesting and good to know. She said, we thought she was just, you know, out of it, you know, when she actually was making a lot of sense of who she was seeing, hearing, and feeling. And so my aunt paid attention to what she was seeing, hearing, and feeling. And yes, we do see our, you know, families that, you know, sometimes, not all the time, it just depends on, you know, how you're, what's going on with you when you're getting ready to cross over. When it's your time, of course. She said that to me, and I was like sitting there saying, you know, I always wondered who had the gift. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about as well. Sometimes you can, you know, you get curious about when you first start to develop, you know, did somebody else in the family have the gift? A lot of times, yes, it is somebody in your family that had the gift to communicate with the people, you know, that had passed away before them. And it really is a gift. And, you know, it was amazing because I looked and I wondered, because I couldn't go to my mother about things, but I would go to my aunt. As a matter of fact, I just texted my cousin the other night, and I said to my cousin, I miss Aunt Marie because I, you know, sometimes I could go to her to, you know, find out stuff, and I don't have all the answers either. And he didn't really say anything. And, you know, I just said, that's really cool. And the one thing I do want to talk to you about, too, is sometimes when we get ready to cross over and you're not in your physical body, but you're in your spiritual body. And my father-in-law at the time was in a coma, type of state with had dementia, dementia or Alzheimer's, one of them. And he just was like, couldn't speak at all. And I noticed, like, when he was talking, when I was talking to him, because I talked to him like he was still there anyways, because they really do hear us, they're just not physically, but spiritually in their bodies and around. And I said, you know what, I'm going to ask a signal from you. And he said, so I said, you know, blink in your eyes, because he was blinking his eyes. Can you blink once if you hear me, and can you blink twice if it's no? And so we kind of like started a conversation that way. And I said to him, I said, you know what, I know I shouldn't, but I said, I'm going to test you, Papa. And I said to him, I go, I just want to know if if everybody's going to make it when you get ready to cross over. And our signal was yes for one, no for two, with the blinking of the eyes, because that's how he was communicating with me. But I knew he was in the room because I could feel him really, really strong. And so I said, okay. And I was really curious to see, and I said, is there somebody not going to make it? So he blinked his eyes twice. So I said, oh, somebody's not going to make it. But you don't have to feel guilty about if you don't make it when somebody crosses over. You know, it just depends on, you know, how we decide to go, because if it's just our time is getting ready to cross over, it's time. And, you know, so I said to him, okay. And I paid attention to what Papa was telling me. And so the next day, you know, when my husband at the time came in the house, and he said, he came over, and I said, Papa's gone, huh? And he said, yes. I said, I have a question to ask you, though. And he said, what? Did everybody make it to say goodbye? And he said, all but one person. I looked up to the heavens, and my brother-in-law at the time did not make it to say goodbye. He just missed it by like 2 minutes or something like that. So the next day I went to my development circle class, and you got to hear me talk about that from time to time. I saw the Reverend. And I said, I have a question to ask you, because I didn't understand what was going on either myself at that particular time of my life. And I said to her, when we get ready to pass away, and we're not like alert or anything like that, are we around spirit? She said, oh yeah, you're around spiritually, and you can see everything that's going on. And I said, oh, okay. And I said, that's really good to know. And so I said, it wasn't just me being, you'll see me do that too from time to time, of being crazy. And she said, no, those are really real. It's just that was the way my father-in-law at the time was communicating with me, because he couldn't communicate and talk anymore with me. So I said some prayers for him, and I thanked him for coming, and I said to him, okay. And the other thing I wanted to share, wakes and funerals, when I was 12 years old, I was at my Uncle Nicky's funeral, actually wake, and I went up to the casket. I feel a lot, so you're going to hear me when they say to you, I feel the presence of spirits around. And I went up to say my respects, and all of a sudden, I started looking at my uncle, and the casket looked very peaceful, and I started feeling like chest pain, and I said, okay. And then there were my 3 aunts were over in the corner crying and everything. So there I am, 12 years old at the time. I said, okay, I'm going to go over and say something to them about not being so sad. And my Auntie Claire, who's, God rest her soul, is on the other side now, I said to her, I said, why are you crying? I said, Uncle so-and-so is not in any more pain. And they looked at me, and they just wiped their tears away. It was like a healing for them. I felt like a healing was being, happening. And I was like, oh, wow. I said, that's really something, and I thanked my uncle, and I said, but I'm feeling chest pain. And she said, he died of a heart attack. And I just looked over to where he was resting, and I said, okay. And sometimes, children are wonderful mediums, by the way. So if any of your children at home come up to you and say, I'm seeing something or feeling something, pay attention to them. Let them be, of course, kids, and all that stuff. But just pay attention, because, like I said, they're wonderful little mediums. And yes, about the question with the wakes and funerals, I believe that we do see our wakes and funerals too. I said to that, which is really, okay. But I said, when it's my time to go, I'm going to get caught up with some of my friends that went, way ahead of me. I'm going to get caught up and have a good chat with them. But, that's just some of the experiences you've had, you can have with spirits when, a deceased loved one's getting ready to cross over. And, there's one thing I would like to share with you that I learned to do when somebody is getting ready to pass away. I write notes to them. I write a letter, and then I ask the family permission if I could put it in that casket. And usually they're pretty good about doing that, like saying, yes, I could put a letter, because it helps me with grief. So that's one way you can, deal with grief. And my sister died, and I said, okay, I want to write her a letter. And I called my father up at the time. He's now crossed over too. I said to him, I go, Dad, I want to write Joanne a letter. He said, okay. So I had enough time to, sit down and write her a letter. And he said, it's really strange, because when he came to get me at the house, he said, it's strange because I was doing fine with the time, but then all of a sudden something happened where he couldn't, come to get me at the time. He came and got me, and I was thanking my sister at the time. And I was sitting there going, thank you, thank you, thank you to her. And when I went to the funeral, I said to the undertaker, can I put this in her box? And he said, yes, you can. And so I put the letter in the box, and I said to him, thank you very much. Well, I didn't, because it was a closed casket, because she was living in Jamaica at the time, and Dad had to go bring her back home. And I said to him, thank you for, letting me do that and put that letter in the box. And so a couple of days went by, and I said I woke up at 5 in the morning, and all of a sudden I saw the letter. I couldn't believe it. It like manifested right there. I was like, oh my goodness. And so I thanked her, for the validation of that, knowing that she received all of our letters. And not only was it mine, but it was my two girls at the time too. They put letters in with mine, so that way their aunt could get them because they didn't get to say goodbye. And I said to them, it's okay if you don't get to say goodbye. You were there when she needed you, or to have a good laugh, or a cry, or, just to go for a walk along, the park or something like that. Just remember those times. And I said, but she received your letter. And again, like I'm just trying to share that with you, because spirit time, that time again at the 5 o'clock in the morning, is the time that they give us what we can handle. And sometimes we might not be able to handle a full visitation, or, they come in our dreams, which those are really real too. Pay attention to those, as well as, what they manifest, because you never know. It was just really something. So from that time forward, I would do letter writing, because that helped me with my grief, with, when somebody had passed away. And it happened a couple of times where I would see the letters. And one time I decided, okay, when my aunt Deanne passed away, I said, I'm going to do something different. I had a little pendant of the Blessed Mother on a necklace, not on a necklace, but, the little things, the medals that they have. I said to my cousin, can you put this in Auntie's box? He said, okay. And then he came outside where we were waiting, and he said, Karen, I want you to put that inside with Auntie Marie. And I said, okay, thank you. And I was like, went over, and I got to put it right near her hand, and I said to her, give me a sign. Like I said, it's different with everybody with spirit communication. Just to let you know that at home, it just depends on where you're at. And I didn't mean to get off the beaten path with you, but I just wanted to tell you. And when I had the medal in my hand, I'm like sitting there saying, okay. And I put it, and we did everything. We went, had the services and all that stuff. And it was a couple of days later, I woke up again at the spirit time, and all of a sudden I saw the necklace that she was wearing, that pendant. But not only did she have the pendant, but she put a necklace on it. So I said to her, thank you very much. I appreciate that. There's just different forms of spirit communication, of how they will come and present themselves. It's what we can handle at the time. So, letter writing is a wonderful way to, deal with your grief. Grief is different with everybody, and stuff like that. So I just wanted to share that with you. And I'm going to get going with the drawing a little bit with you, too. And if anybody recognizes what we call spirit art, it's a quick sketch. Last time I did a show, the drawing was validated. So everybody that can understand when a drawing comes through, feel free to call the station up. And I'm going to get going with her. I have an older woman that I'm drawing on the paper. It's called a quick sketch, like I said. And every piece of curl was in place with her. And she had really pretty snowy white hair. It just takes me a while to get it on. And it's all like really curly, you know. She had a nice head of hair, actually. And I just like sitting here saying, okay. And she was a kind lady. And I like to show everybody at home as I'm going along with the drawing. So this is what I have so far. It's called a quick sketch. And I will continue with it. But I had to talk to you guys about like spirit visitations and all that. Because, you know, those are really real. And I had to learn to trust. It took several years of study with me to really trust what I'm seeing, hearing, and feeling from spirits. And, you know, it took a long time. And there are places you can go, you know, if you think you have the gift and you want to learn more about it. I was fortunate enough that I was led to the First Baptist Church of Quincy when I went to a bookstore, and I met somebody there, and I was like, all right. And I said to him, I go, you know, am I a kook? He said, no, you just, you know, just starting out as a medium. And I said, what's a medium? I said to him, I go, then he explained a little bit to me about what a medium was. He said, you know, it was nice because I was happy to, you know and learn what was going on with me. Because I said to him, I go, you know, I sing in a choir. And I said to him, I go, it was really weird because I would go over to like the choir members, you know, that I knew in the choir at the time. And I said to them, I would tell them, you know, about what was going on and who I was seeing. And they said, that's all wonderful, Karen. But they said, but they passed away. So that's when I had to really investigate more and find out what was going on with me. And so it was nice because when I went to what's called the development circle, where, you know, I introduced myself, and I was nervous, of course, like that and everything like that, because I didn't know what I was going to be getting myself into. And everybody was nice. Everybody went around the room and they introduced themselves to, you know, me, and everybody explained how they communicated with people. One person had the gift to see spirits, another person had the gift to feel spirits, and another gift had the gift to smell spirits. So it was really kind of cool, and knowing that there was a place to go and learn made me feel a lot better. It took a long time for me to accept the gifts of, you know, spirit communication, because I didn't know. I want to show you this lovely lady. That's coming through on the paper, and it's called Spirit Art. And, you know, it took, like I said, you know, it was nice to know I'm not alone. And so do pay attention to what you see and hearing and feeling. And I'd like to share my experiences with you because maybe it'll help, you know, somebody at home. With, you know, with your gifts, and you know you're not alone. And if anybody, okay, if anybody has any questions, feel free. We're going to be here once a month to call the station. But I want to share the spirit visits with you today, and if you ever you want to talk about anything spiritually, feel free to call. I'm going to show you her one more time. I'm also getting the name of Marie. There's a woman named Marie that's around me tonight too. I just wanted to pass that on because I do get names too as well. And our loved ones are gone but not forgotten, and just a thought away. Wishing everybody love and light from the other side, and have a good night.